Welcome inside the CitrusTV studios for a special Webisode edition of Talking Points. I'm Jack Watson. This Tuesday, Polish President Andrzej Duda signed a controversial law that makes it illegal under Polish law to accuse the Eastern European country of complicity in the Nazi Holocaust. The law also bans the use of certain terminology such as, quote, Polish death camps when referring to the camps built and operated during the Nazi occupation of Poland. Polish lawmakers defended the bill, saying the bill prevents assigning wrongful blame to Poland, while opponents to the bill say the law limits freedom of expression, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says of the bill, quote, one cannot change history. Here to unpack both sides of the issue and the impact the bill has on European politics are Talking Points analysts Thomas St. Hilaire and Conor Wight. Thank you for joining me today, gentlemen. Now, the first question I'm going to pose is to break down what both sides are saying about this, Thomas.
Right. Well, kind of what you said. I mean, in Poland, there's a real movement to kind of crack down on some of the speech that's being used, particularly the language that refers to Polish death camps. To a lot of people in Poland, this is seen as inaccurate, and also elsewhere in the world. Germany and Israel have said this is an inaccurate statement, and obviously a lot of these camps were German-run by Nazi Germany. On the other hand, you're seeing the arguments that typically come into the fold anytime you suppress speech, which is, like this is very content based, and for purposes like academia, what kind of broad implications has it had? I mean, that was another big critique, was that this law was very broad, and could it perhaps have an implication on other forms of speech that are used?
And speaking of the broader implications that it might have on European politics, Conor, the bill is in the context of rising far-right politics in Europe. We saw the election of Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz. So does this bill have any sort of bearing in terms of far-right politics in Europe?
It could. There is a worry that this could set a precedent going forward for potential free speech restrictions, purely based on whatever the government really wants to put forward. Now, it's not necessarily to the extreme that Poland is using this. They're more using this to try to defend sort of, the fact that Poland was heavily persecuted by the Nazis. And it's a sensitive topic for anything, as you said, especially with the Polish death camps phrase, to implicate them at all in any of the things that the Nazis did. However, there is, the argument that this is revisionist history, because at the end of the day, although the majority, there was no acting government in Poland that actively supported death camps or anything like that, but there were plenty of instances of Poles doing atrocious things to their Jewish neighbors and, things of that like. So there is the worry that if this law, is successfully sort of instituted in Poland, then it could set a precedent across Europe.
And Thomas, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is this revisionist history?
I mean, I'm going to build off of what some of Conor said, because you're seeing the rise of a lot of these far-right movements in Europe, but you're also seeing a lot of opposition to those far-right movements. Obviously in France, when you had Emmanuel Macron, Marine Le Pen, there are still these very real movements rejecting a lot of this rise to the far right. We've seen this play out in other recent elections. So, and even in Poland, this is extremely divisive. So you're seeing a lot of divisiveness around the issue in Poland. You're seeing it abroad. You're seeing, we talked about Israel, their opposition to it. Even the United States Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has come out obviously very strongly against this policy. And you're starting to see a lot of this tension both around the world, but also within Europe, between these far-right parties and the opposition to those.
Now, on that note, Germany is also a country that is very sensitive to the Nazi Holocaust. Now, there are a lot of speech restrictions in place in that country when it comes to the Holocaust and Nazism. Is this law in Poland, something that free speech advocates should be concerned about?
I think so. I think it really could be, because they have a provision in the law which states that historians and artists won't necessarily be persecuted for as long as they're making factual statements regarding Poland and the Holocaust. However, there is a worry because of how vaguely this law is worded that it could be wielded in such a way that persecutes free speech. Some historians are worried that newcomers into the field are going to feel worried about what they might put out there, so they themselves might self-restrict themselves on the speech that they make. So it's really a case of how it's going to be applied, and we have yet to see that.
And the idea of restricting this speech also is maybe a little bit more foreign to us in the United States, where we've seen a lot of Supreme Court rulings in the past that has come out and given free speech perhaps a little bit of breathing room based off the content or the accuracy of it. Defamation and some of those suits aside, we see, for example, the press has a certain amount of breathing room. And to this extent, it's also really this debate off of, we've seen this in Turkey, obviously, with some of the crackdowns on free speech. We've seen this in other countries. To what extent, where do you draw the line with how you limit speech?
Certainly very interesting things to talk about. Conor, Thomas, thanks so much for joining.
Hey, thank you very much.
And that's all the time we have on this Talking Points webisode. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at CitrusTV News, and all of our content is available on CitrusTV.com. And tune in next Thursday here on OTN for the latest episode of Talking Points. For Thomas St. Hilaire, Conor Wight, and everyone here at Citrus TV, I'm Jack Watson.